Hi, I'm Jason Draco with Prince Draco Productions. I'm here with voice talent Steve Blum. I hope you know who he is because he's Spike from Cowboy Bebop. He's a voice in like, I think I print out 10 pages of your IMDb. Your IMDb is like 10 pages long.
Yeah, I've been doing it for a while.
You've been doing it for a while. But how did you get, what did you do before voice acting?
I did so many different things. I've had many jobs and several careers. So just prior to the voice acting full time, I was working for a low budget film company called Full Moon Entertainment. And I started there as a driver and mailroom
The Puppet
clerk.
Master people?
Puppet Master people, yeah.
It's my favorite movies, actually.
Yeah, originally we were Empire Pictures, and we did Ghoulies and From Beyond and Reanimator, all those films. So I started out working in the mailroom there, and that was how I got into voice acting. In the mailroom, it was full of actors. I was the only non-actor in the room. I was trying to be a musician at that point. I was playing in an R&B band, and they were doing this Japanimation thing on the weekend. And it was all very new at that time in the States. Streamline, I think, was the only company doing dubs. And I didn't really have any preconception of what it was. All I knew was that they were going to feed me free breakfast and lunch if I would come in and just be a monster tearing the arm off of another monster. And I thought, okay, all my friends are doing it, why not? It's a good way to spend a Saturday. So I went in and I auditioned for the thing, and I booked the role on the spot. And eventually they gave me a speaking role, and it worked 26 episodes on a show called The Guyver. And simultaneously I was working my way up through that company, because you can't support yourself on voice acting in most cases. And so for the next 14 years, I worked through this company until I became an executive. I was head of marketing at the film company. And unfortunately working with a lot of people who were out of integrity, shall I say. And the entertainment industry is not a friendly one necessarily. And so the owner of the company is a great guy, but there were a lot of people that were coming in that wanted to change things up, and I just didn't like it anymore. I didn't like the dishonesty of the business. And so at that point I had been doing voiceover on the side just for fun for several years, and still continuing to play some music here and there. And eventually I booked a 7-Eleven commercial, and I thought I had it made. Did a couple of those, and then the union went on strike, and I was out of work for 8 months and living on credit cards, and had to work my way back in. And so several years later I was finally able to make a living at it, and I really wasn't doing that until I was over 40 years old. And so now here I am. Fortunately, it's worked out. My dad has stopped asking me what my backup plan is. So that's how I
Just recently he stopped?
Yeah, within the last 5 years. Literally, within the last 5 years. They went to their first con this last year.
So when they rolled the footage of Cowboy Bebop for the first time, what went through your head?
I thought this is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And listening to the music, I was amazed that they wanted me to be any part of this thing. I had worked on quite a few anime before that, but it was something different. Bebop was something different. It crossed a lot of boundaries that hadn't been crossed before, and it I think brought Japanese animation to America in a way a lot of shows just hadn't been able to do. You know, through the use of American icon type visuals and fantastic soundtrack by Yoko Kanno, and all the elements were there of just such a masterpiece. And I didn't know that it was going to become what it became. Everybody else seemed to know. I was the last one to know. And so getting involved in that, I went in blind, and it wasn't really until a few years later that I started to realize the magnitude of how powerful this thing really was.
Recently, you've been like transitioning to more American cartoons based on Marvel, DC, Nickelodeon, Legend of Korra. Is that any different? Do they dub the same way as you do in the studios for anime, or is there a different way that they do it there?
It's a completely different process.
Okay.
For anime, we're by ourselves in the booth,
Yep.
and it's basically me and the director and whatever team is behind the glass that comes in from Japan or wherever else. And we're looking at a screen with the moving picture. We're looking at a script in front of us, and we're trying to watch the director and trying to act and stay in character all at the same time, match the lip flaps, and so it's much more technical in anime. But that's what I was raised on. That's all I knew as far as acting was concerned. So that's my comfort zone. I'm actually very comfortable in that room. When I started doing the American animation, it was terrifying, because I'm working with actors. The caliber of the actors are just astonishing, and I'm working right next to them and playing off of them. And just the brilliance in the room is incredible. And most of these guys are theatrically trained or had a whole comedy career or an on-camera career. And I'm the quiet, dumb guy in the room that really doesn't get the references. I'm not a big film buff. I've never been on TV. So I spent a lot of that time terrified in the beginning. But it's such a great community. They're really fun, crazy clowns. I mean, we're all a bunch of little kids in the room. And that energy really translates well to American animation, especially on some of the more recent shows, where it creates a whole different kind of energy when you're playing off of somebody live. And it will change my performance sometimes, and we'll rework the characters on the fly. So it does add a whole different dimension to it. I don't like it any more or less. I love them both for different reasons. And video games are a whole different animal that incorporates some of both elements. It's just that you have to do it 2,500 times.
You gotta punch like 100 times.
Oh my God!
Take
yeah.
100 hits.
Exactly. Yeah, the scripts are this thick, and literally you're doing each effort and reaction 10 to 20 times, and call it, changing it from a he to a she. In the case of like Mass Effect, doing all the same lines, identical, but then just changing. It's crazy. It's just crazy.
Now, an interesting question I kind of just thought of. You do Wolverine and pretty much everything, the X-Men anime, Wolverine, the X-Men, Ultimate Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. Have you ever in any way or form, social media, even a tweet, has Hugh Jackman ever listened to your stuff and actually said anything to you?
I don't know if he has. I reached
I
out
always
to him.
wondered that.
I reached out to him once when he did the first X-Men movie. I actually wrote a letter through his agency, and I don't know if it ever got to him. He's a big star. I don't know if he ever read it. I don't know if he's even interested in the animated version. I'd love to have a conversation with him at some point. I'm a big fan of his work in all the genres that he's worked in, and he's a massively talented guy, and he does so many different things. He's one of the people that fascinate me. So I would love to have a conversation with him just because I'm interested in him as a person. But no response yet. I'm hoping that someday that'll happen. But I'm not a celebrity stalker either.
Yeah.
I'm not fazed by celebrities. I work with a lot of celebrities now, and most of the time I'm the guy in the room who has no idea who they are. I'll do a whole show with them, and I will have no idea who they are, and everybody starts fangirling over them as they're coming out of the booth, and I'm going, "What? Who are you? What have you done?" But I'm just blissfully ignorant, and I think it serves me because I see them as the person first, and I hope people see me that way too.
All right, so Cartoon Network brought the spaceship back.
Yes.
Toonami's back, and you tweet about it before it, or when it was about to happen.
Yeah.
And you just promote it so much. Like every time on the weekend, I see your tweets and your tweets, and I think that's great because like you're not getting paid to do that.
No.
To say Toonami's on.
Yeah.
Steve Blum just said Toonami. Okay.
Yeah.
Cartoon Network, let's go.
Toonami's back, bitches.
I mean,
yeah.
he pushes it, and that's not like something normally you see. Is like you put the excitement. I mean, I can't say for sure, but I mean, I think you really helped the excitement back into people.
Well, I hope so.
I think more people got Twitter ever since you started using Twitter too.
That's the reason I started using Twitter. Honestly, I had a Twitter account for a little while before we did the April Fool's stunt. But I was just curious. I was curious to see what the fans' reaction would be to the April Fool's thing, because we had been away from Toonami for a long time, and I loved working on it. And I love the guys that I work with. They're amazing people. And it was part of my history, and going to cons and hearing how people come up to me and tell me that I was part of their history. It's a humbling thing. So I was just curious, and so I went on Twitter and I just wanted to see what the fans were thinking, and I just got bombarded with responses. It was amazing. I was up all night, and so since then I feel like I'm part of this community. Besides being just a voice actor, the fans have been so embracing of me and my career, and I wouldn't have a career if it weren't for the fans. So I'm grateful. I'm immensely grateful for their attention to the work that I do, and that it might help them in their lives in some way, might get them through a difficult time, or I can't even begin to tell you all the stories that I've heard of how it's affected them. So I feel it's the least I can do is to be part of this community to keep Toonami on the air, because the guys who are doing it on a shoestring budget, and the network hasn't been able to support them financially like they really need to be to get it back to where it was, and to bring Sarah back and all the other animation that's monstrously expensive to do. So I feel, the least I can do is just be part of it and nudge it along, and it is honestly a labor of love. I love Tom, and I love that Toonami was such a great vehicle for bringing anime to a big, wide audience in America.
So I guess my last question would be about Tom. Like new shows are showing up all the time. Like I think Soul Eater starts
Soul Eater.
this weekend, and
Starting, yeah.
last week I heard your voice. Like how does the process with Tom work? Like do you do that in a personal studio and send it to them, or do they pull you in?
I've always worked remote. I've always worked in the past I worked out of a studio in Studio City, I think it was, and we worked over the phone, and they were in a studio in Atlanta. And so it continues to be that way, but now I set up my own home studio, and so it's a lot easier for me to do. I can just kind of set up my sessions and do them in my underwear if I want to. Don't hold that visual. Tom in his underwear is really ugly. But they're metal, so they're kind of cool. It holds the sweat in. Anyway, more information than you wanted to know. Yeah, so I work out of my home studio, and we do it over the phone. I have a voice patch kind of thing, and so they're writing all of the copy. I don't write any of that stuff. They do all the game reviews. All of the inspirational stuff, they do all of that stuff, and so I'm literally just the voice monkey who tries to deliver it.
Well, thank you very much for the interview, and thank you for continuing to hype Toonami.
My pleasure.
As long as you're here, I don't think it's going to die again.
I hope not. I really hope not. Yeah, stay up late, people. Stay up late. Only Toonami.
Have a good rest of the convention.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.